Miami knocks off New England, and I think that creates a situation here. New England was playing in Miami last week in a very, very hot, humid location. I think that wore New England out. Now, New England's not a young team. Tom Brady is not a young guy anymore, but he's a great quarterback, and they shut them down, and he did not look good. And Miami looked very good. I think a lot of that had to do with the heat. I don't think we could elevate. Again, be careful about week one and what you see, and don't overreact to it. I don't think you can elevate Miami to the point where they should be a road favorite here. And it's really not that big a favorite. Buffalo opened 1-44.5, and it's gone up to Miami being 1 and pick'em. So it's pretty much an even game, and the total has come down to 42.5, 43. Now, with the number of times that Buffalo runs the ball, you tend to think that leans towards being an under. However, both these teams are kind of using an up-tempo game. That doesn't mean up-tempo pass a lot. That means up-tempo run a lot of plays, but a lot of those are going to be running plays. And I can see taking 44.5 going under that because that's a tough number. It's a critical number. And the game looks like an even game. Buffalo had a pretty big week last week, too, maybe even more impressive. They went on the road at Chicago, pretty big underdog, and they won the game. And, of course, Chicago, Jay Cutler occasionally is a terrible quarterback and makes a lot of mistakes, and occasionally he's brilliant. So you never know what you're going to get with Jay Cutler. But Buffalo took advantage of the situation, and they come away with a win that nobody would have expected them to get this early in the season. So both these teams were winners last week as underdogs. And in this situation, I think Miami's going to have the harder time getting up because they play the division opponent, the number one team in their division, and they knocked them off. So this probably is a spot for Buffalo to be a little bit more of a favorite than they are. I see the game at Pick'em 43 in most spots, 42.5 in others. And right now one place has Miami 1. There were a few other places had them 1 before, so there's money back and forth on this game. Now we're going to move on to Jacksonville, Washington. I'm not going to say much here. Both these teams are trying to find an identity. Neither one of them were very good last year, and neither one of them were very good last week. I know Jacksonville got out to a 17-0 lead over Philly, but then they collapsed and did not perform well at all in the second half. Washington gave up a lot last week to Houston and that totally underperformed. There's a lot of questions about RG3. If I was the owner or the coach of Washington, I would not be happy with his performance either in preseason or the first regular season game. Dallas, Tennessee, Jerry Jones. As long as Jerry Jones is running this team, I don't have a problem with him being an owner. He's a rich man, wealthy man, very successful, knows how to make money. They'll never win. They're never going to win as long as he's there. It's just that simple. He needs to resign from that position so they can build a football team. But he's not going to do that. The line on this game is Tennessee 3, and they're favored so that you could actually say in some spots the 3.5. So it's somewhere in between 3.5. And the total went from 47.5 to 49.5. I do believe you're going to see a better performance out of Dallas this week. Couldn't get any worse. If they got worse, they'd look like the New York Giants. But I think Dallas is going to play a little bit better, and Tennessee beating up on Kansas City, which, by the way, is a very overrated football team. So I'm not going to give them all the credit that the score would indicate you should give them. Tennessee being a 3.5-point favorite over Dallas might be a stretch. I think maybe 2.5 to 3 rather than 3.5 to 4 would be more appropriate. Both these teams are not as good or as bad as they looked last week. And by the way, I should go back to the Jacksonville-Washington game. I never mentioned the line. It opened Washington 6, Jacksonville and against Jacksonville, the total 45. It's still 6, and 43.5 would be probably or 43 would be the right total. So there's been some under money. I can understand that when you look at two offenses last week that underperformed. The under is not. It's not surprising the under got the money. Going on to the next game, we talked a little bit about the Giants and Arizona. Arizona played. They're a tough team. 10-6 last year, did not make the playoffs, only because they come from the toughest division in football, the NFC West, and they got Rams in there. They got the Seattle, and of course you've got San Francisco. So they're tough, four tough teams. Although the Rams look like they're in big trouble without a quarterback. It opened the Giants 144.5. It is now 2.5 for 3 Arizona. So it's flipped the other side, and the 42 and 42.5 is the total. Arizona has some problems. They lost their center. They lost a couple of other players, key players, during the preseason, and they are diminished. Let's just say that. This is not as healthy a football team as I'm sure their management would like to be putting on the field. And you have to believe the Giants are not going to look as bad as they did last week. There's going to be a shakeup in New York, and they're going to come out with, this is their home opener. This is a big game for them to come out and at least be representative of an NFL franchise. They were absolutely horrendous last week. They will get better, but they are playing a very, very good football team in Arizona. However, there is the thing that you have to be aware of. Teams traveling west to east and playing at 10 o'clock in the morning, which, it's an early start, and that is going to be an issue. It has been an issue for most teams going west to east. So that's makes it a little bit tougher, but they are now a 3-point or 2.5-point road favorite at the New York Giants. Again, this is a tough week because you don't know if the teams were as good or as bad as they looked the previous week.